A thick fog, smelling faintly of salt and pine, clung to the historic main street of Willow Creek. Through its swirling tendrils, an extraordinary sight emerged. 6 powerful German shepherds moving in near-perfect unison. Their muscled bodies flowed with a silent, rhythmic grace, eyes sharp and focused ahead. There were no leashes, no harnesses, just raw energy, held in absolute, breathtaking control. Onlookers paused, their necks craning, eager to see the master of these magnificent animals. The low murmur of speculation turned to gasps of astonishment as the figure at the helm came into view. It wasn't a seasoned trainer nor a stern handler, but a child. A small girl, barely 6 years old, her fragile form a stark contrast to the imposing dogs surrounding her. Yet they moved around her like a protective shield, responding to her almost imperceptible commands. A soft whisper, a subtle hand gesture, and the pack would stop, sit, or continue their march together, a silent, disciplined unit. "There's something wrong with that picture," muttered Eleanor Vance, her eyes narrowed with suspicion from behind the lace curtains of her Elm Street Victorian. No child that small could control animals like that. "Mark my words, there's trouble brewing in that house." What the onlookers didn't know was that Eleanor's suspicion would be the catalyst for a cascade of revelations, secrets far deeper and more startling than anyone in Willow Creek could have imagined. Who was this silent child, leading a pack of former canines with nothing but a whisper and a touch? What hidden pain lay behind those quiet eyes, and what did her extraordinary bond with these dogs truly mean for her safety and her future? Could a town divided by fear and fascination ever truly understand the language of her heart, or would suspicion tear apart the fragile world she had built with her loyal companions? Welcome to Canine Code Red. Subscribe to our channel to hear Emily's full story and explore the profound ways the bond between humans and animals can heal, challenge, and transform. Listen to the entire narrative to understand the complexities of this unique connection and its impact on a small town grappling with trauma and redemption. Chapter 2. Echoes of the Past. Emily Davis, the child who could command German shepherds with a faint wave of her hand, hadn't always been so quiet. She was the daughter of Michael and Sarah Davis, renowned canine trainers who had partnered with police departments across New England. Michael, a former canine officer himself, had trained his lead dog, a powerful German shepherd named Sarge, for both police work and complex obedience. Emily grew up in a vibrant home where dogs weren't just pets, they were family, colleagues, and constants. By the age of 3, her unusual gift was already apparent. She could calm the most troubled dog with a gentle touch. Their life was shattered by tragedy one rainy October night. A pickup truck ran a red light, claiming the lives of her parents. Emily was physically unharmed, but the emotional toll was devastating. From that moment, she stopped speaking to people, retreating into a profound silence, her only form of communication through soft whispers shared with her dogs. Doctors later diagnosed her with mild autism, a partial explanation for her deep connection with animals and her difficulty interacting with others. She went to live with her maternal grandparents, Robert and Martha Davis, in a simple, aging house on Cape Cod, just outside Willow Creek. In their early 70s, they found it increasingly challenging to care for a grieving, silent child, and 6 large German shepherds: Sarge, Bella, Duke, Luna, Shadow, and Rex. Robert suffered from heart issues, and Martha battled severe arthritis, making the physical demands of exercising and training the active dogs nearly impossible. Their meager pension barely covered the dog food, let alone Emily's therapy, which seemed to yield little change. Despite the hardship, they never once considered separating Emily from her dogs. They knew in their hearts that these animals offered a comfort no human could provide. Behind the faded blue door of the Davis home, an unusual education was unfolding. Emily had found her parents' old records in the attic, training diaries filled with commands, techniques, and personal observations about each dog's temperament. Night after night, she read them by flashlight, absorbing the knowledge of her lost parents. She developed her own silent language, a complex system of hand signals, soft whistles, and subtle body cues that the dogs obeyed with uncanny precision. When Martha's back pain worsened, making her daily walks impossible, Emily quietly but resolutely decided it was her turn to lead. One cool morning, she attached the dog's lines to her waist, walked down the steps, and began a journey that would bring both admiration and controversy to their quiet coastal town. Chapter 3. The March on Main Street. Emily's first solitary walk with her pack through downtown Willow Creek was a spectacle that stopped traffic. Cars slowed, drivers stared at the tiny figure leading 6 German shepherds moving as one. Sarge, the largest, usually walked slightly ahead, a furry vanguard. Emily was often nearly lost amidst the large bodies of her dogs, only the flash of her bright red sneakers visible beneath the moving tide of paws. At first, she stuck to the quiet side streets and parks, but her confidence grew with each passing day. By the 3rd week, walking down Main Street as the shops opened had become part of her morning ritual. Some residents would even adjust their schedules just to witness the remarkable sight. Can you believe that? Frank Russo, the hardware store owner, would call out to anyone nearby as he unlocked his shop door. "Those dogs listen better to her than my teenagers listen to me." He wasn't the only one impressed. Cell phones came out, and videos of Emily expertly maneuvering her pack began to go viral. A flick of her small wrist, and the group would split, 3 left, 3 right, before rejoining perfectly at the corner. There was never a tangle of lines. At pedestrian crossings, they would form a silent semicircle around her, waiting patiently for her signal to cross. Initially, the town's awe outweighed its concern. Tourists wanted photos with Emily, dubbing her the dog whisperer of Willow Creek. But she rarely responded, her focus always on her dogs. Shopkeepers left out bowls of water. Officer David Miller, who began to monitor her walks for safety, found himself repeatedly astonished. He eventually became something of a quiet protector, impressed by her effortless control. "I've been on the force 20 years, Officer Miller told his colleagues. "I've never seen dogs trained like that. There's something we could all learn from that kid." The community began to help Emily in small but meaningful ways. The bakery saved bone-shaped cookies for her pack. The local coffee shop made a special hot chocolate for Emily, which Martha would pick up, gently explaining that Emily wasn't used to taking things from strangers. Chapter 4. Whispers turned to worry from behind the sheer lace curtains of her old Victorian house on Elm Street. Eleanor Vance watched Emily's rise to local fame with growing unease. A retired school principal, she saw herself as the community's moral compass. Something about the scene felt inherently wrong. She carefully timed Emily's solo walks, often 45 minutes a day, and worried about the child being left unsupervised. Where are her guardians? She'd ask her husband, Charles, knowing the question was less about seeking an answer and more about expressing her distress. "It's reckless, she could be hurt, or those powerful dogs could injure someone else," she insisted. This perspective resonated with some townsfolk. Margaret Evans, who now crossed the street to avoid Emily after her poodle had been startled, began to dread the morning walks. Questions about Emily's schooling spread, championed by the PTA president, and whispers of neglect began to circulate. The gossip intensified when Emily didn't participate in the community Easter egg hunt. Eleanor Vance seized the moment, initiating what she called concerned citizens' coffee hours on her wide veranda, where residents gathered to discuss Emily, her dogs, and her elderly grandparents, who seemed unable to cope. The community's division came to a head at a town council meeting one evening in May. While the formal agenda was to discuss dog leash regulations in the downtown area, the real subject was clearly Emily Davis and her animals. The historic town hall was packed, latecomers forced to stand against the walls or in the aisles. Mayor Williams, sensing the volatility, tried to keep order as citizens approached the microphone one by one. Miguel Rodriguez, owner of a popular local diner, stepped up to the podium, sleeves rolled up, revealing tattooed forearms. His stance was clear. "I've had my restaurant on Main Street for 15 years, he stated. "Those dogs are an attraction. People sit out on my terrace just to watch them go by. Frankly, they're better behaved than some of the folks I see every day." One side of the room erupted in applause. In contrast, Diane Carter, clutching an expensive handbag, her voice tight with anxiety, spoke next. My grandchild has severe dog phobia after being bitten last year. Is it fair that she has to face 6 large, unleashed dogs every time she walks to the library? What about her safety? The other side of the room applauded in response. The town was clearly divided. For over 2 hours, the debate raged, delving beyond leash laws into deeper views on child rearing, public safety, tradition, and change. Dr. Tom Stanley, a veterinarian, presented data on the intelligence and trainability of German Shepherds. Patricia Moore, an insurance broker, cited statistics on potential risks and liabilities. Though no ordinance was changed that night, the community's fracture was undeniable. The next day, Pastor Thomas of the First Baptist Church spoke in his weekly sermon about fear of those who are different, and Father Michael of St. Mary's Catholic Church in Frosttown preached about defending the vulnerable, neither mentioning Emily by name, but their meaning was clear. The Willow Creek Oracle newspaper published conflicting editorials, sparking heated online comment sections. At Seaside Elementary, where Emily should have been in 1st grade, kids invented a game called Emily and the Dogs, always arguing over who got to be Emily. Through it all, Emily herself seemed untouched by the turmoil. She continued her silent conversation with the creatures she considered her true family. She was unaware that she was the quiet epicenter of a mounting conflict, a tension about to explode within the Davis family itself, with unforeseen consequences for everyone involved. Chapter 5, The Formal Inquiry. Eleanor Vance had never seen herself as an activist until now. Sitting at her old meticulously neat desk, she carefully added another signature to her personal petition aimed at ensuring Emily Davis's safety in the community. Her handwriting, honed by years of teaching and grading student essays, was precise. She had collected 27 signatures, a good start, but not enough. She needed a solid case to present to the authorities. Charles, she called to her husband, who was absorbed in a crossword puzzle. I need you to drive me to the senior center. After dinner, Betty Jimenez is introducing me to her bridge group. Charles sighed and closed his newspaper. In their 46 years of marriage, he knew the futility of arguing with Eleanor. Eleanor, don't you think you're overreacting? The Davis kid isn't causing any trouble. Eleanor sat up straighter, her voice firm. Not yet, Charles. Not yet, but do we wait until someone gets bitten, or until that child, who is clearly struggling, gets hurt? Her grandparents can't manage. This is clear neglect, and if no one else will step in to protect that child, I will. By the end of the week, Eleanor's campaign had expanded. Her petition circulated at church gatherings, hair salons, and the local country club. She enlisted Margaret Evans and Diane Carter as allies, forming a network to monitor Emily's movements. Where did she walk? What time? From a safe distance, they documented every instance a dog strayed, if she crossed the street carelessly, or if one of the German shepherds showed any sign of aggression towards other animals. Eleanor's moment came at the Rotary Club meeting, where she was given time during the public comment portion. Fellow citizens, she began, her voice clear, trained by years of leading school assemblies. Our community faces a serious issue. She painted a picture of imminent danger, convincing listeners that an accident was not just possible, but probable. She swayed Bernard Whitaker, the club president, and a prominent local insurance executive. No company would underwrite a homeowner's policy with that kind of liability, he declared, signing the petition. I'm calling my cousin at Child Services immediately. Later, Eleanor secured the support of Councilwoman Victoria Harrington, who had recently lost an election to Mayor Williams. Using the issue as a political platform, she praised the citizens for raising their voices on a vital matter and promised to review existing ordinances. Her message was clear: Mayor Williams had failed to enforce laws protecting the town's safety. Not everyone was persuaded by Eleanor's campaign, however. Officer Miller refused to sign the petition, insisting he had seen no law broken. Dr. Stanley, the local veterinarian, wrote an opinion piece in the Willow Creek Oracle defending Emily's competence with her dogs. Meanwhile, the bakery and coffee shop owners put up "We Support Emily" signs in their windows, though they were slowly being overshadowed by Eleanor's escalating campaign and her meticulously planned strategy. One sunny Tuesday morning, Eleanor's campaign achieved unexpected momentum. Jonathan Reed, a journalist from a regional newspaper, was in town visiting his mother when he saw Emily walking with her dogs. He immediately recognized the scene as perfect for a poignant human interest story. That evening, his article, titled "The Dog Whisperer Child, Miracle or Menace," appeared online. It featured striking photos of Emily's silent world and quotes from Eleanor, now dubbed a concerned community leader. The story exploded. By the next morning, it was being discussed on national television. Is she a gifted child, or is she in danger? A breathless morning show host asked. Stay tuned for the story of the 6-year-old girl, led by 6 powerful German shepherds, in a quiet Massachusetts town. Next, social media interest soared, and the hashtag #DogWhispererChild went viral across the country. A video compilation of Emily and her dogs racked up millions of views. Online petitions sprang up, some demanding immediate action to protect Emily, others defending her unique bond with her animals. Animal behaviorists offered conflicting opinions, though none had met Emily or her dogs. Child psychologists theorized about the potential effects of trauma and attachment issues based solely on photographs. The intense national spotlight had a profound effect on the Davis family. Reporters camped outside their driveway, and they had no peace from curiosity seekers. The stress exacerbated Robert Davis's heart palpitations, forcing a trip to the hospital. Martha Davis changed their phone number after receiving a flood of calls, some threatening, others tearful. From across the country, in the eye of the storm, Emily withdrew further into herself. She only went out in the early mornings with her dogs, both she and her pack growing increasingly anxious. The sheer volume of national attention compelled local government to act. Mayor Williams, facing conflicting demands, urgently convened an emergency meeting with the police chief, town attorney, and representatives from the Department of Children and Families, DCF, and Animal Control. They held a press conference in front of the town hall, attended by reporters from Boston and Providence. Chapter 6. A visit from the authorities. Standing before the gathered press in the chilly coastal air, Mayor Williams declared, "Willow Creek is committed to the safety and well-being of all its residents." He announced a comprehensive investigation into Emily Davis's situation, promising due process to determine the appropriate course of action. Yet, his vague language satisfied neither side. Eleanor Vance, standing near the reporters, loudly denounced the mayor's response. "Too little, too late," she shouted. Emily's supporters showed their disappointment, and muttering rose as the animal control officer discussed plans to evaluate the dog's safety. Online, every word of the press conference was dissected. Commentators read between the lines, and TV pundits debated the implications for parental rights, the welfare of children with special needs, and the potential relevance of the Americans with Disabilities Act to Emily's case. As dusk settled, a sleek black sedan with official plates pulled slowly into the Davis family's driveway. Martha, peering from behind the thin lace curtains, gripped her husband's hand tightly. Melissa Thompson, a social worker from the Department of Children and Families, and Officer Bruno Jimenez from Animal Control approached the front door. Inside the house, Emily felt her grandparents' tension and moved closer to Sarge, burying her small fingers in his thick fur. "Mr. and Mrs. Davis," Miss Thompson began, her voice devoid of emotion after brief formalities. "We're here today to conduct an initial assessment based on concerns raised about the care of your granddaughter and her dogs." Robert Davis's voice trembled slightly as he invited them into the simple living room. "Emily is a special child," he said, as the 6 German shepherds settled protectively around the silent girl. "They've been her bridge to them since her parents died." Officer Jimenez studied the dogs carefully. "I understand the emotional bond," he said, pausing as Sarge, the pack leader, met his gaze. "But we have to consider safety protocols when dealing with 6 large animals." His voice softened slightly under the big dog's steady gaze. "We understand the situation," Martha quickly added, her hands, swollen with arthritis, resting in her lap. "But these dogs, they saved Emily." After the accident, she stopped eating. She wouldn't speak. They were the only ones who could reach her when we couldn't. While the adults spoke, Emily retreated into her own world. She quietly directed the dogs with slight finger gestures, positioning each one precisely in the room. The officials watched the child's calm, orchestrated movements. Miss Thompson turned to Emily, her voice gentle, the tone often used with children who have experienced trauma. "Emily, do you like living here with your grandma and grandpa and your dogs?" Emily glanced briefly at Miss Thompson, her eyes, so much like her mother's, before looking away again. She remained silent. "We have a formal assessment scheduled for Tuesday," Miss Thompson announced, standing. "A judge will determine if temporary measures are necessary while the investigation continues." She handed Martha a document outlining their rights and the next steps. As the officials left, they didn't notice Eleanor Vance's car parked down the street or the slight smile on her face as she whispered, "Finally, that child will get the help she needs." Inside the Davis home, Martha sank into her chair, tears streaming down her aged face. "They might take Emily, Robert," she sobbed, "or take the dogs. Either way, it will break her." Robert knelt beside Emily, who sat surrounded by her dogs. "Emily," he said softly, "we really need your help. It's important to show them how much you need each other." A flicker of something, recognition, or perhaps determination, crossed Emily's eyes before she gently stroked Sarge's head again and remained silent. But stronger than any words, the formal evaluation of the Davis living situation began on a crisp, clear Monday morning. Chapter 7. The eyes of the experts. A week before the scheduled court hearing, social worker Melissa Thompson returned to the Davis home, this time accompanied by Dr. Alan Finch, a child psychologist specializing in trauma and autism. Martha greeted them on the porch, slightly shaky, offering a thermos of coffee with trembling hands. "Robert's not feeling well today," she explained, leading them into the living room, where Emily sat with her legs dangling over a worn rug, encircled by her 6 German shepherds. "His heart, the stress," she added. As the visitors entered, the dogs shifted slightly, reforming their protective circle around Emily. Dr. Finch observed how Sarge, clearly the leader, positioned himself between Emily and the guests, his posture alert but calm. "We're here to observe Emily interacting with her dogs in her daily routine," Miss Thompson explained, adjusting a small camera after Martha nodded her reluctant permission. "We're particularly interested in the morning walk, as that's been the source of public concern." Over the next few hours, the specialists quietly watched Emily with her pack. She communicated using a complex series of hand gestures, soft commands, and body language. Dr. Finch was struck by Emily's ability to maintain steady eye contact with the dogs while consistently avoiding direct gazes at any of the humans present. As they prepared for the walk, Martha gently helped Emily into her coat, whispering words of encouragement. "She gets anxious when people get too close," she explained to the observers. "The dogs sense her fear and immediately become protective." As they walked down Main Street, more eyes watched than ever before, news of the impending hearing having spread. Miss Thompson observed how the circle of dogs tightened around Emily whenever someone approached, forming a living shield. Despite the public attention and the presence of the observers, Emily led the walk flawlessly, the dogs responding to her commands with remarkable discipline. "Remarkable, truly," Dr. Finch murmured softly to Miss Thompson. The depth of their connection, the trust between them, losing this could have a severe impact on her psychological state. Miss Thompson, ever professional, replied, "We have to consider her overall well-being. The question is this bond truly helping her, or is it a form of avoidance preventing her from healing and socializing?" While they maintained their distance, Eleanor Vance suddenly broke from the crowd and approached Miss Thompson, determination etched on her face. "You see the problem, don't you?" she said, loudly enough for others to hear. "A child this age, managing animals this size in a public space, it's untenable. It's an accident waiting to happen." Miss Thompson remained calm in the face of Miss Vance's accusation. "We are thoroughly assessing all aspects, Miss Vance," she said. "While we appreciate your input, I cannot share preliminary observations at this time." As the week progressed, the scrutiny on the family intensified, with more specialists joining the observation team. A veterinary behaviorist was called in to evaluate the dogs. An occupational therapist looked at Emily's developmental milestones. A social worker specializing in elder care assessed the ability of Robert and Martha to provide long-term care. Professionals arrived at the Davis house in a near-constant stream, each carrying clipboards, cameras, and assessment tools. In the midst of the escalating intrusion, Emily withdrew even further, speaking only to her dogs, occasionally offering minimal responses to her grandparents, who were visibly wilting under the pressure. Chapter 8. The Unseen Bond. On the third day of observation, a sudden event underscored the depth of Emily's connection with her pack. While Robert Davis was making lunch in the kitchen, he suddenly collapsed, overwhelmed by stress and his heart condition. Before Martha could even cry out for help, Sarge, who had been lying quietly beside Emily in the living room, was on his feet, racing towards the kitchen. Emily was right behind him. By the time Dr. Finch reached the scene, Emily had already managed to position her grandfather safely on the floor. Sarge stood over him, alert, while the other dogs formed a protective perimeter. "He does that sometimes," Martha explained, breathless, after paramedics had tended to Robert and said he needed rest. "Sarge can tell when Robert's not right, even before he feels the symptoms himself." Dr. Finch and Miss Thompson exchanged a look. "Seizure detection," Dr. Finch murmured softly. "Some dogs can sense changes in human body chemistry before a seizure or a cardiac event occurs. It's rare, but medically recognized." "Did Sarge signal Emily?" Miss Thompson asked. "No," Martha replied, arranging a blanket over her husband's shoulders. "Sarge sensed something was wrong, and Emily just knew. They have their own way of communicating, especially since her parents." Her voice trailed off with emotion. The revelation about Sarge's ability to detect Robert's health crises in advance cast the entire situation in a new light. Miss Thompson consulted with her supervisor, who readily agreed to add Sarah Jenkins, an expert in evaluating service animals, to the team. Jenkins spent a full day observing Sarge with Robert, confirming that the dog indeed exhibited early warning signs before minor episodes of dizziness or weakness. "Sarge is not just a pet," Jenkins stated in her report. "He functions as an untrained but effective medical alert dog. With proper training and certification, he could serve officially in this capacity." As this news spread through the local community of Willow Creek, perspectives began to shift subtly. Medical groups expressed interest in Sarge's abilities. The Cape Cod Service Dog Association offered to train and certify Sarge as an official service animal. Even some of Eleanor Vance's supporters began to question whether separating Emily and her dogs was truly in her best interest. Nevertheless, Eleanor remained resolute. "Just because one dog shows good behavior doesn't mean it's safe for a child to live with 6 potentially dangerous animals," she insisted to anyone who would listen. "If anything, they should keep the dog that helps and give the rest away." The case took a new turn when Dr. Nathan Evans, a new member of Dr. Stanley's veterinary clinic, expressed a desire to observe Emily and her dogs. Dr. Evans, a tall man with a slight stoop and glasses that often slid down his nose, had focused his studies on animal behavior at Cornell. Open to diverse perspectives for the upcoming hearing, Miss Thompson welcomed his involvement. Unlike the other experts, who maintained a professional distance, Dr. Evans chose to approach Emily and engage more directly. After an hour of quiet observation, he asked Martha for permission to sit near Emily on the floor, still respectful of her space. When Martha agreed, he sat down, occasionally taking notes, but mostly just watching quietly. On his third visit, something remarkable happened. Sitting on the floor a few feet from Emily, he quietly mirrored one of her hand gestures, a faint rotation of the wrist followed by a tap of the finger. Luna, the smallest of the shepherds, turned, curious, and came to sit in front of him. Emily gasped, and for the first time, she looked directly at one of the observing professionals. "I hope that's okay," Dr. Evans said softly, his gaze directed at Emily, not Martha or Miss Thompson. "I'm studying your signals. It's a very complex and beautiful system. He made another gesture, and Duke, another of the dogs, immediately lay down. "Did your parents teach you this?" Emily didn't answer, but she bent down to pick up a worn notebook from beside her and handed it to Dr. Evans. He opened it to find detailed drawings of hand signals, annotated with adult handwriting and simpler versions, clearly written by a child. "These are your parents' training notes," he murmured. "You're studying them and adapting them." Emily gave a small nod, the first clear interaction initiated by her with any of the professionals. Chapter 9. A Defender Emerges. That afternoon, Dr. Nathan Evans shared his observations with Melissa Thompson and the rest of the team. "She's not just repeating what her parents taught her," he said, his voice filled with enthusiasm. "She's modifying the techniques based on her size and adapting them to each dog's personality. It's incredible. I've never seen anything like it at her age." "But is it truly safe, Miss?" Thompson asked, still focused on the core issue. "Safer than many human-animal relationships I've witnessed in my career," Dr. Evans replied quickly. "These dogs aren't just trained, they have a profound bond with Emily. They see her as their leader, someone to obey and protect." His passion was evident, surprising even his usually stoic colleagues. Breaking this connection wouldn't just be emotionally painful, it could be detrimental to her development. "She's learning responsibility, nonverbal communication, empathy, all through her interaction with these dogs." As the hearing date approached, the investigative team compiled their reports. Each brought an expert perspective to the complex case. Robert and Martha Davis, though anxious, felt a flicker of hope from the growing understanding and support among the majority of the specialists. Emily, however, remained quiet, speaking rarely, seeming hesitant to perform her usual routines when observed. On the eve of the hearing, Dr. Evans arrived unexpectedly at the Davis home, carrying a thick folder. "May I speak with you privately?" he asked Robert and Martha, who led him into the kitchen, leaving Emily in the living room with her dogs. "I've been reviewing research on selective mutism and animal-assisted therapy," he began, spreading articles and papers on the table. "There are documented cases where children who are nonverbal with people begin communicating first with animals and eventually learn to engage with humans." He adjusted his glasses, his eyes reflecting conviction. "I firmly believe Emily's connection with these dogs could be a pathway back to human interaction, not a barrier to it." Tears welled in Robert Davis's eyes. "That's what we've hoped, but we're not experts," he said, his voice cracking. "We're just trying to hold what's left of our family together. I would like to testify tomorrow at the hearing, if you will allow me," Dr. Evans stated firmly. The next day, the courtroom at the Barnstable County Courthouse was packed. Judge Catherine Adams, known for her direct approach and deep knowledge of family law, surveyed the crowded room. Her sharp gaze immediately quieted the last whispers. Eleanor Vance sat at the petitioner's table with her lawyer from Boston, both projecting an air of resolute conviction. Across the aisle, Martha and Robert Davis were accompanied by James Collins, a local attorney who had taken their case pro bono after hearing their situation. Emily sat quietly between her grandparents, head bowed, her dogs cared for at home by a veterinary technician. Melissa Thompson opened the proceedings by summarizing the investigative team's findings. She calmly and clearly presented the differing expert opinions, which sometimes conflicted regarding the impact of the situation on Emily's health and development. The session lasted over an hour, airing various perspectives, some contradictory, on the impact of the situation on Emily's mental and emotional well-being. Judge Adams was naturally sharp, her incisive questions reflecting careful preparation and a deep understanding of the case details. Evans took the stand. He shed his usual academic diffidence and became a passionate advocate. He presented his observations of Emily, her unique communication with the dogs, her innovative use of her parents' methods, and Sarge's vital role in detecting Robert's medical emergencies. Evans cited landmark studies on the benefits of the human-animal bond, particularly for children who have experienced trauma and have difficulty communicating. In my professional opinion, Dr. Evans concluded, looking directly at Judge Adams, separating Emily from her dogs would inflict severe damage to her mental health with no clear compensatory benefit. Instead, I recommend a guided program to further strengthen this unique connection, allowing it to serve as a bridge to improved communication and socialization with others. Under cross-examination by Eleanor Vance's lawyer, Dr. Evans was questioned intensely about his credibility, potential bias, and the scientific basis of his statements. As the questioning wore on, Eleanor remained stoic, occasionally nodding at her lawyer's pointed questions. When it was her turn to speak, Eleanor described herself as a concerned citizen with extensive experience in child development, born from a long career in education. "My heart goes out to the Davis family," she stated, each word weighted with sincerity, but sympathy must not blind us to potential dangers. 6 powerful dogs, led by a child who is silent and traumatized, is a combination fraught with uncertainty. She laid out her fears one by one, projecting images of incidents involving German shepherds found in online news reports. Our duty is to be cautious. Do we wait for a tragedy to occur? Chapter 10. An unexpected witness. As the hearing approached its 4th hour, Judge Adams declared a brief recess. Outside the courtroom, the tension was palpable. Reporters clustered around the key figures, while supporters from both sides murmured anxiously. Robert Davis sat on a bench, looking exhausted, as Martha gently massaged his arm, ever watchful of his condition. When the judge and lawyers returned, it was time for closing statements. The Davis's lawyer emphasized the importance of family unity and the observed benefits of Emily's bond with her dogs. Perez's lawyer reiterated the issue of risk and the detrimental effects of Emily's social isolation. Judge Adams listened silently but intently, her expression revealing she was weighing a decision that would shape the lives of everyone in the room. "Before I render a decision," Judge Adams announced, pausing as the courtroom fell silent, "I would like to invite Emily Davis to speak, if she so chooses." This caused heads to turn and murmuring among the spectators, all aware that Emily had not spoken publicly since her parents' death. Martha whispered softly to Emily, who simply shook her head, not lifting her gaze. The judge nodded with compassion. "Very well. Based on the strong and persuasive testimony presented, I am prepared to issue a preliminary order while evaluations continue." Suddenly, she stopped, distracted by a commotion at the back of the courtroom. The large doors burst open, and Sarge, the German shepherd, entered swiftly, an unexpected and dramatic sight. He headed straight down the aisle, his direction purposeful, as the veterinary technician who had been caring for him hurried behind him, apologizing profusely for the disruption. A wave of surprise and awe swept through the courtroom as Sarge weaved through attempts to intercept him. He went directly to Emily. This unforeseen event seemed poised to change the course of the hearing, a moment charged with possibility, reinforcing the depth of Emily's unique bond with her dogs, a bond that might not only alter her future but the entire community's perception of their connection. Chapter 11. The Language of the Heart. A hush fell over the courtroom as Sarge confidently approached Emily. Judge Adams, known throughout Barnstable County for her strict adherence to court order, was momentarily stunned by the spectacle. The bailiff froze, hand automatically reaching for his sidearm at the sight of the large dog. Dr. Evans immediately rose and gave a calming signal to the officer. "He means no harm," he said. "No sudden movements, please." When Sarge reached Emily, she gently stroked his head, calming him instantly. Sarge quickly scanned the room before fixing his gaze on Robert Davis, whose face had gone pale. Sarge whined softly and nudged his grandfather's knee with determination. Dr. Evans stepped closer. "Mr. Davis, are you all right?" Sarge might be sensing something, he said. Robert waved a hand, breathing heavily. "I'm fine, just the stress, I guess." Dr. Evans turned to the judge. "Your Honor, this could be the medical alert we discussed. It appears Sarge is trying to communicate something. Mr. Davis may be having a cardiac issue." Judge Adams regained focus, nodding to the bailiff. "Call for medical assistance," she ordered. Then she addressed the room. "We will take a 15-minute recess. Everyone except those directly involved in the case and medical personnel, please exit the courtroom." As people filed out, murmuring about what had just happened, paramedics arrived to examine Robert. They quickly determined his blood pressure was dangerously high and his heart rhythm erratic, necessitating a trip to the hospital. While they assessed him, Sarge remained alert, occasionally returning to Emily as if reporting back before repositioning himself by Robert's side. "The dog was right," a paramedic remarked as they prepared to transport Robert. "Without immediate intervention, this could have been a major heart attack." Martha, torn between accompanying her husband and staying with Emily, turned to Melissa Thompson, visible distress on her face. "I can't leave Emily alone," she pleaded. "But Robert needs me too." Before Miss Thompson could reply, Dr. Evans interjected. "I will stay with Emily," he offered. Perhaps it would be best if Sarge went with Mr. Davis. His ability might be helpful to the doctors. Watching the situation unfold, Judge Adams made an unusual suggestion. "Mrs. Davis, would it be acceptable for your granddaughter to wait in my chambers with Dr. Evans while we attend to this? I give you my word, no decisions will be made in your absence." Martha looked at Emily, who gave a small nod of assent, as paramedics wheeled Robert out, with Sarge following protectively and Martha trailing anxiously behind. Judge Adams escorted Emily and Dr. Evans to her private office. The remaining people in the courtroom, including Eleanor Vance and the lawyers, were asked to return in an hour. In the spacious office, Emily remained silent, sitting in a large leather chair, her gaze downcast. Evans sat carefully beside her, talking gently about his own German shepherd growing up and asking questions that didn't require answers from Emily. Judge Adams watched quietly from her desk, appreciating Dr. Evans's patient, gentle approach. After nearly 20 minutes of speaking mostly to himself, Dr. Evans took some photographs from his pocket. "These are from my visits," he said, placing them on the table in front of Emily. "They showed her and the dog's training. You've trained them so well, your parents would be incredibly proud." Emily began to look at the photos, showing clear interest for the first time in anything other than her grandfather's condition. Slowly, she reached out and touched a photo of Sarge standing beside her. "He's remarkable," Dr. Evans continued. "All of them are. But your role is the most remarkable. The way you communicate, the trust you've built, it's very special." Judge Adams, who had been watching silently, finally spoke. "Emily," she said, "I know this is hard. Everyone is talking about you, making decisions about your future. It feels like you don't have a voice in your own story." She moved from her desk to a chair near Emily, maintaining a respectful distance. "I'm here to listen if you're ready to share. You don't have to speak if it's too much right now." Emily looked at the judge, then back down at the photos. After a moment, she pointed to a picture showing the 6 dogs gathered around her on the living room floor. "Your family," Judge Adams said softly. Emily nodded. Dr. Evans sensed the moment and quickly produced a notepad from his bag. "Would you like to write down what you're thinking?" he asked gently, "or maybe draw it?" Emily accepted the notepad and pen and immediately bent her head to write, her face serious. The scratch of the pen on paper echoed in the quiet room. When she showed them what she had written, both adults were surprised, not by a drawing, but by a clear, perfectly formed sentence. "Please, don't take my dogs. They chase away the bad dreams." Dr. Evans was silent for a moment, clearly impressed. "Emily," he said, "your writing is beautiful." Emily quickly wrote again, "I can read too. Mama and Papa taught me when I was little." Judge Adams sensed a deeper reason and asked gently, "Why don't you speak? Is it painful or frightening?" Emily paused, thinking, before replying again on the paper. "After the accident it got hard to talk. When I try, it feels like it doesn't work right. Grandma and Grandpa get sad when I try too hard." Through this silent conversation, Emily slowly revealed her deep understanding of her situation. She knew the community's concerns, understood her grandparents' struggles, and showed a wisdom beyond her years. She also conveyed how vital the dogs were to her emotional state, particularly in grieving her parents. My hands still remember Mama and Papa through the dogs, she wrote, a poignant expression implying that caring for and training the dogs was a way of staying connected to her parents. Chapter 12, The Judge's Decision. As the recess neared its end, Judge Adams prepared to resume the hearing. We need to go back into the courtroom, she told Emily. What you've told me makes your wishes much clearer now. But Emily, it's important to get your feelings on the record, even if you can't say them out loud. Emily looked at her notepad, her face serious, and wrote, "Can Sarge stay here by me? He will be quiet, I promise." "He can," Dr. Evans replied. When the hearing resumed, Martha Davis had returned, bringing good news. Robert was stable and undergoing tests. Thanks to Sarge, a potentially serious medical event had been caught and treated in time. As directed by Judge Adams, Sarge was now lying quietly at Emily's feet under the table at the front of the courtroom, a symbol of the powerful bond at the center of the case. Before we proceed with closing arguments, Judge Adams stated, "I want to share some new information that came to light during our recess." She recounted her conversation with Emily, highlighting what the child had written and her strong desire for her dogs to stay. Eleanor Vance's lawyer immediately rose. "Your Honor, speaking privately with a minor witness without legal counsel present is highly irregular. We move to strike those statements from the record." Judge Adams looked steadily at the lawyer. "Counsel, the primary duty of this court is to protect the best interests of the child," she said. "I will consider all relevant information, especially when it is the child's own means of expressing her thoughts." The lawyer persisted. "This child is deeply emotionally disturbed and fixated on these animals. She is not in a position to make decisions regarding her own welfare." As those words echoed in the courtroom, a sudden shift occurred. Emily, who had been sitting quietly beside her grandmother, straightened up. She reached out and gently stroked Sarge's head, and the dog remained calm. Then, Emily stood and moved to stand beside him. Martha reached for her granddaughter. "Emily, sweetie, you don't have to." But Emily had already reached the stand. She gently placed her hand on Sarge's back, as if drawing strength from his presence. The courtroom fell silent. All eyes were now on the small figure at the heart of their community's controversy. Emily looked out at the crowded room, before focusing on Judge Adams. "The dogs," she said softly, barely audible, startled by her own voice. She paused. Sarge moved closer to her, a silent support, and she took a deep breath. "They protect me," she said, her voice clearer now, though effort was visible in each word. "When the accident happened, the one that took Mama and Papa, I was in the back of the car. Sarge pulled me out before the fire came." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. This revelation, that Emily had been in the car during the tragedy that killed her parents, and that Sarge had saved her, had never been mentioned in any report or previous testimony. Martha Davis clapped a hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. "She never told us," she whispered to Miss Thompson. "We thought she was with her sitter that day. The police only said she was found safe at the scene." Emily continued, her voice trembling but growing stronger with determination. "Sarge saved me, and now all of them help me," she said. "They protect me from the bad dreams, from the memories that keep coming back." Her voice broke momentarily. "Please, don't take them away. They are my only connection left to Mama and Papa." A profound silence settled over the room as Emily returned to her seat. Sarge remained by her side, as did Martha, quietly weeping while Emily, seemingly drained of emotion, sat exhausted after her stunning confession, no longer crying. Chapter 13. A Shift in Perspective. Visibly affected but remaining professional, Judge Adams addressed the room. "It seems we have heard the most crucial testimony in this case today," she said. "Miss Vance, do you wish to respond?" Eleanor Vance, whose rigid posture had slowly softened as Emily spoke, rose slowly. For the first time since the case began, she looked at Emily not as an issue to be resolved, but as a child deserving of compassion. "Your Honor," she began, a rare hesitation in her voice. "I initiated this action believing the child was in danger. I still maintain that proper precautions are necessary." She paused, a struggle visible on her face. but after witnessing what we have today, I cannot in good conscience argue that these animals should be removed from Emily's life." Her lawyer grabbed her arm, clearly alarmed, but Eleanor continued. "I wish to withdraw my petition and instead move that the court issue an order for professional monitoring to ensure safety and aid in Emily's continued recovery." Judge Adams nodded, acknowledging her understanding. "Thank you, Miss Vance. I appreciate your willingness to reevaluate your position." Then, she turned to the entire court. "Given the extraordinary nature of this case and the testimony heard today, I am prepared to render my decision." Judge Adams delivered her ruling with careful deliberation, acknowledging everyone's concerns but emphasizing Emily's unique bond with her dogs. She ordered a 6-month period of observation, with regular assessments by child welfare services and animal behavior experts. She also appointed Dr. Nathan Evans to develop a therapeutic program to help expand Emily's communication skills. Most importantly, the court permitted the dogs to remain with Emily, provided safety measures were implemented, and additional support was given to her grandparents to help them manage. The court understands there is no perfect solution in cases involving a child's trauma, Judge Adams concluded, but when a child finds a pathway to hope in an unconventional way, it is our duty to nurture that hope while ensuring her safety. That has been my goal today. After the hearing, the courtroom buzzed with activity. Reporters scrambled for photos, while people whispered about the judge's decision. In the midst of the chaos, Emily remained close to her grandmother, her hand resting on Sarge, seemingly oblivious to the surrounding noise. Though she had fallen silent again after speaking publicly for the first time in years, this silence was self-possessed, calm, and deep, broken only occasionally by soft words spoken to Sarge, the dog who had once saved her life, and now, in a way, had saved her again. The next morning, the sun rose bright, and a palpable lightness filled the Davis home. Emily went out for her usual walk with the dogs, and this time, the curious gawkers were gone. As she walked, several townspeople approached her to offer greetings and express support for the judge's decision. She usually responded with just a nod, but her movements and demeanor were noticeably lighter. Martha shared with Melissa Thompson during their first follow-up visit that Emily had started speaking at home. Simple, direct sentences about daily routines, a sign of slow, steady progress. "It's like something unlocked in her after she spoke in court," Martha said. "She's not suddenly chatty, but she doesn't seem as afraid to speak now." As public attention gradually shifted to other news, Eleanor Vance slowly faded from the spotlight. She embraced the quiet of her new life, avoiding the media and social gatherings. Lights were sometimes seen on in her house, late into the night, a sign of activity, but she rarely went out, and usually only for essential errands. Her husband mentioned to a few friends that Eleanor was going through a period of personal reflection, but didn't share much about its true nature. Chapter 14, The Weight of Guilt. 2 weeks after the hearing, Dr. Nathan Evans began the therapeutic program ordered by the court. He visited the Davis home 3 times a week, engaging with Emily and her dogs in sessions that documented her progress, while gently introducing new activities to help expand Emily's ability to communicate, not just with her dogs, but with other people. Robert, slowly recovering from his heart issues, often watched from his chair, occasionally offering insights from his son's dog training techniques. One warm Thursday morning in early June, Dr. Evans suggested moving their session to a public garden near the harbor. "A change of scenery will help us see how they adapt to a new environment," he explained to Martha. "And it will be good for all of us to get some fresh air and sunshine." The session in the garden was quiet and orderly. Emily calmly led the dogs through exercises, while responding to Dr. Evans with short words or gestures of assent. A few passers-by stopped to watch, and Dr. Evans gently explained what they were doing, enough to satisfy curiosity, but not so much as to expose Emily to unwanted attention. As they were packing up to leave, Emily's demeanor suddenly shifted. Her grip on Sarge's fur tightened, a clear sign of anxiety. Dr. Evans followed Emily's gaze and saw Eleanor Vance standing at the edge of the garden path, holding a bag of groceries, her expression unreadable. Before Dr. Evans could react, Eleanor approached, lacking her usual confidence, seemingly burdened by a heavy weight. She stopped a few feet from Emily. "Emily," she said softly, pausing and looking at Dr. Evans as if seeking permission. "May I speak with you for a moment?" Their eyes met briefly, and she added, "Under proper supervision, of course." Dr. Evans focused on Emily, who gripped her dogs tighter but remained calm. "It's your choice, Emily," he reminded her gently, ensuring the child understood her rights in the situation. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to." To Dr. Evans' surprise, Emily gave a small nod, though she carefully positioned Sarge between herself and Eleanor like a defensive barrier. With Emily's silent assent, Eleanor slowly stepped closer. "I need to apologize," she began, her once firm voice now soft and uncertain. "I thought I was doing what was best for you, but I was wrong to try and take your dogs away." She stopped, seeming to struggle to continue. "There's something else I need to tell you, something I've been ashamed of for a long time." Dr. Evans watched Emily's reaction carefully, ready to step in if needed. "Miss Perez, if this is too much for Emily," Dr. Evans began. "It was me," Eleanor suddenly blurted out, as if the truth could no longer be contained. "The night your parents died, I was the one driving the car that went through the stoplight." Silence wrapped around them as the weight of her words sank in. Emily froze, her eyes wide. The dogs, sensing her sudden tension, shifted slightly, encircling her protectively. "It was raining hard that night," Eleanor whispered, her voice heavy with emotion. "I was arguing with my husband on the phone. I didn't notice the light had changed. By the time I saw your parents' car, it was too late." Tears streamed down her face. "The police called it a tragic accident, bad weather, poor visibility. I didn't face charges, but I've carried the guilt every single day." Dr. Evans stepped forward to shield Emily, but to his surprise, the child gently restrained him by the arm. Though pale, Emily's gaze remained fixed on Eleanor, intense and seemingly deeper than her young age. Chapter 15, Towards Redemption. "Every time I saw you walking with the dogs outside my house," Eleanor continued, her voice ragged, "it felt like a ghost was visiting me. The guilt I had buried would just surface. I told myself you were dangerous, that the dogs were a threat, any reason to justify my interference. I convinced myself I was doing the right thing, trying to somehow make amends." Her voice broke. "But when I saw you in court, when I heard your voice for the first time, I realized I wasn't protecting you. I was protecting myself from my own conscience." Emily's silence stretched for so long that Dr. Evans began to worry about her state. Before he could suggest they leave, Emily spoke. Her voice was soft but clear. "You hurt Mama and Papa." Eleanor nodded, the tears still falling. "Oh, Emily, and there's nothing I can do to undo that. I understand if you hate me. You smell like the accident," Emily said suddenly, a realization that startled both adults. "That's why they always got worried when we walked past your house. They remember you from the accident." This new information, that the dogs remembered Eleanor from the crash scene, landed heavily. Eleanor seemed to shrink where she stood, her shoulders slumping as if bracing herself against the weight of the truth. "I am so sorry, Emily," she said. "I've wanted to confess for so long, but fear stopped me. I don't expect you to forgive me." Before she could continue, something unexpected happened. A cyclist suddenly rounded the corner of the garden path, startling a flock of resting pigeons into flight. The sudden noise behind Emily made her jump slightly. Sarge, reading Emily's movement as a sign of danger, immediately moved to protect her, positioning himself between her and the sudden chaos. In the split second of commotion, Eleanor stepped forward, perhaps to steady herself, or perhaps to reach out to Emily. But Sarge, now alerted, and facing the person he perceived as a threat to his family, acted on instinct. He moved closer and barked a warning, not attacking, but clearly intending to deter. Startled by the dog's sudden movement, Eleanor stumbled backward onto the paved path. Dr. Evans reacted quickly, shouting a command to Sarge, a command Emily herself had taught him during training. Sarge immediately backed down and returned to Emily's side, but the damage was done. Eleanor lay on the ground, clutching her arm, breathing heavily. "Are you hurt, Miss Vance?" Dr. Evans asked, kneeling beside her and checking for injuries. "My arm," Eleanor gasped. I think I broke it from the fall. She looked past Dr. Evans towards Emily, who had managed to calm the other dogs despite the turmoil. The dog didn't bite me. He was just protecting her. I slipped. Despite Eleanor's clear explanation, news traveled fast. Someone who saw the incident in the park immediately called 911 and misreported it as a dog attack. Within minutes, police and paramedics arrived, and the chaos Judge Adams had tried to prevent was unleashed. As Eleanor was placed on a stretcher, she repeatedly insisted the dog had not attacked her. Officer Miller approached Emily, hesitant. "I'm sorry, Emily," he said softly, "but I have to take Sarge down to animal control for now, while we sort this out. It's standard procedure any time someone gets hurt, even if there's no bite." Emily's face fell, the trust she had begun to build instantly dissolving as she clung tightly to Sarge's fur. Dr. Evans stepped in to explain, using Eleanor's own words that the dog had not been aggressive. But Officer Miller shook his head, his face full of regret. "There's nothing I can do, Doc. We have to follow protocol. Don't worry, he'll be taken care of, and you can visit him while this is being processed." As Officer Miller carefully attached a leash to Sarge's collar, Emily's voice returned with a sudden heartbreaking power. "No," she cried, her voice filled with pain. "Please, he was just protecting me. Don't take him." The officer paused, his face showing conflict, duty battling sympathy. "I'm sorry, Emily, this is just temporary. We'll get it sorted out quickly," he replied gently. From her stretcher, Eleanor forced herself to speak despite her pain. "It wasn't the dog's fault," she stated firmly to the paramedics. "Put that in your report. I just slipped. The dog was only doing his job, protecting the child." But despite their heartfelt pleas, protocol was followed, and Sarge was gently led away to the animal control van. Emily's tears flowed freely now, Dr. Evans holding her, her grief palpable, felt by everyone present. The other 5 German shepherds circled around her, whining, seemingly mourning the loss of their packmate and the evident distress of their young leader. The incident in the public garden was a significant setback in Emily's journey, a painful test in the midst of her progress. Yet, within the heartbreak, a remarkable transformation was quietly beginning, a change not only in Emily's life, but in the community's perspective on loyalty, forgiveness, and healing. Chapter 16. The Pond. The next day, Emily Davis sat motionless on the porch of her grandparents' house, the 5 remaining German shepherds silently surrounding her. Since Sarge had been taken, she had retreated back into the profound silence that had enveloped her in the months after her parents' death. Martha repeatedly tried to coax her granddaughter back to normalcy, offering favorite foods that went unnoticed, speaking comforting words that seemed unheard. Robert, ignoring his doctor's orders, was on the phone constantly, pleading with officials to right what he called a grave injustice. Dr. Evans arrived early, having spent the night at the Animal Control Center to ensure Sarge was all right. The dog was calm and alert, showing no signs of aggressive behavior that would warrant a long quarantine. "He's being well cared for," Dr. Evans told Emily, kneeling down to meet her sad eyes, "and Officer Miller is pushing for an expedited review of the case." The expedited review was personified by Melissa Thompson, who arrived at the Davis home before noon, carrying a tablet. Her expression was grim, as if bearing difficult news. "It's complicated," Miss Thompson began, after Martha invited her in. "Miss Vance has been released from the hospital with a broken wrist. Even though she keeps saying the dog didn't attack her, the incident has triggered a mandatory safety evaluation, as per Judge Adams' directive." Robert couldn't contain his frustration and slammed his hand on the table. "That woman, she's the root of all our problems. From the accident that killed our children to this mess, she's responsible." "Mr. Davis," Miss Thompson interjected, her voice sharp with warning. "Becoming emotional won't help Emily right now. We need to focus on the legal aspects and find the best path forward." She then turned to Dr. Evans. "You witnessed the entire event. I need your detailed statement for the report I'm compiling." While the adults were engrossed in conversation in the kitchen, Emily remained on the porch, seemingly unaffected by the turmoil inside the house. Only Duke, the most sensitive of the remaining dogs after Sarge, elicited any reaction from her, occasionally receiving a gentle pat as his head rested on her lap. The discussion in the kitchen was abruptly interrupted by the arrival of Miguel Rodriguez, the tattooed owner of the local diner, who had spoken in support of Emily at the town meeting. "Sorry to barge in," he said from the kitchen doorway, looking slightly uncomfortable, "but there's something you need to see." He held up a small USB drive. "Last year we installed security cameras around the restaurant as part of the harbor revitalization project. They capture a view of the waterfront and part of the public garden." He glanced briefly at Emily, still sitting on the porch. "After what happened yesterday, I reviewed the footage from the past few months. There's one particular video, about 8 weeks ago, that's critical." Martha led everyone into the living room, where they gathered around Robert's old desktop computer as it slowly booted up. Miguel inserted the USB and opened a video file marked 6 weeks pre-hearing Tuesday morning. "It was a Tuesday morning," he explained. "Emily usually walks past the restaurant, but she didn't that day. We got worried, so I checked the cameras right away. But I didn't notice anything unusual at the time. I should have looked closer." Though the video was slightly grainy, the public garden was clearly visible from a high angle. The time on the screen read 5:47 a.m., much earlier than Emily's usual walk. Emily was clearly visible, walking alone, only Sarge with her. She approached the small decorative pond in the center of the garden and knelt beside it, seeming to peer into the water. "They were cleaning out that pond that week," Miguel added. "It was only half full because they were doing repairs, but the pump was still running." In the video, Emily reached for something, seemingly a small toy boat stuck near the middle of the pond. Suddenly, she slipped and fell headfirst into the shallow but slippery water. Sarge reacted instantly. He jumped into the pond, carefully maneuvering himself under Emily to push her upwards. Amidst the tense moments, he managed to nudge Emily closer to the edge of the pond, using his strength to help her scramble back onto the concrete. Emily lay on the edge of the pond, shivering violently, while Sarge climbed out beside her, shaking water from his fur. He nudged her gently until she sat up. The video showed Emily clinging tightly to Sarge, trembling but seemingly unharmed. After a few minutes, she stood, looking weak, and left the garden, leaning heavily on Sarge for support. No other person was seen in the entire sequence. After the video ended, silence descended upon the Davis living room. Martha's hands trembled as she covered her mouth. "She didn't tell us," she whispered. She remembered Emily coming home that morning, soaked. She'd only said she'd slipped in a wet spot. If it wasn't for Sarge, Doctor. Evans stared at the frozen image on the screen. "That's exactly what I was talking about," he said. "Their connection. Sarge isn't just obeying Emily. He's actively protecting her, making decisions when she's in danger." Miss Thompson, rapidly typing on her tablet, her voice regaining its earlier determination, spoke. "This video is invaluable. It explains what happened yesterday. It shows Max's actions towards Miss Vance were protective, not aggressive. It fits the pattern we're now seeing." She looked at Miguel. "Mr. Rodriguez, can we use this video for the official review?" "I have backups," Miguel said, handing her another USB drive. "And I'm ready to testify in court. That dog is a hero, no doubt about it." News of the video spread rapidly through Willow Creek, carried on the swift current of town gossip. Residents who had been unsure which side to take were now outraged by Sarge's impoundment, which they saw as unjust. By afternoon, a heated group had gathered in front of the Animal Control office, holding hastily made placards that read "Free Sarge" and "Heroes don't belong in cages." Chapter 17, Confession and Consequences. The situation grew even more intense the following morning when Eleanor Vance arrived at the Davis house. Her arm was in a cast, and her face showed pain, but she was determined. She didn't come inside the house. She went directly to the porch where Emily and her dogs were. "Emily," she said softly, keeping a distance. "I just learned about the pond, how Sarge saved you." She paused, seeming to gather her strength. "I have a heavy debt to pay. The accident that took your parents. It was worse than I told you yesterday." It wasn't completely true. Emily's gaze was sharp and watchful as Eleanor continued. "I said I was distracted because I was arguing with my husband. That was true, but it wasn't the whole story." She took a deep breath. I'd had 2 glasses of wine at lunch. It wasn't enough to fail a legal blood test, but it was enough to affect my driving, especially with the weather being so bad. Her confession echoed, loud enough for Robert and Martha, who were now standing in the doorway, to hear. Martha gasped, while Robert scowled, his face etched with anger. "I've carried this guilt for 2 years," Eleanor continued, tears streaming down her face. "I used my influence to cover up the full truth, convincing myself it was for the best. But when I saw you with those dogs who might recognize me and expose the truth, I panicked. I convinced myself I was protecting you. But the truth is, I was protecting myself from my own guilt." Eleanor took an envelope from her bag, with her uninjured hand. "I've been to the police station and given a full statement to set the record straight," she said. "I've also resigned from all my community roles." She placed the envelope on the porch steps. "This is a formal letter accepting full responsibility for what happened yesterday, and confirming that Max was acting as a service animal should. My lawyer has already sent copies to Animal Control and Judge Adams." Emily watched Eleanor silently for a moment, before speaking in a quiet but firm voice. "Why now?" Eleanor's shoulders sagged, as if the question was too heavy to bear. "When I saw the video of the pond incident, seeing how Sarge didn't hesitate to save you, I realized how far I'd run from my own responsibility. That dog, he had more courage and integrity than I did." She wiped the tears from her face with her uninjured hand. "I can't bring your parents back. I can't erase the pain I've caused, but I can make sure you don't lose another loved one because of me." As if in response to Eleanor's words, a police cruiser pulled into the driveway. Officer Miller stepped out, accompanied by a familiar, excited figure. Sarge, tail wagging furiously, strained at his leash. "Special delivery," the officer announced, smiling broadly. Based on Miss Vance's statement, the review was expedited. Max is officially cleared and recognized by the court as a service animal. The scene that followed would be spoken of in Willow Creek for years. Emily, who seconds before had been silent and withdrawn, suddenly cried out with joy and raced down the porch steps. When Sarge saw her, he sat patiently, waiting for Officer Miller to remove his leash. Then, amidst a whirlwind of emotion, the dog and the girl reunited. Sarge's tail thumped wildly as Emily hugged him tightly, whispering words meant only for him. Eleanor Vance watched their reunion quietly, tears on her face, not tears of self-pity, but something more complex. Regret mingled with the first glimmer of redemption. Her painful honesty, and the steps she had taken, had unintentionally become a pathway to healing, not just for Emily, but perhaps for herself as well. The long-buried truth was now out in the open. It was painful, but ultimately, it set everyone involved free. Chapter 18. Seeds of Hope. The summer after Sarge's brief impoundment was a time of significant change for Willow Creek and for Emily Davis. Judge Adams amended her earlier ruling, officially recognizing Sarge as a service animal, setting a legal precedent that would help other families with similar needs throughout Massachusetts. This recognition was extended to all of Emily's dogs, identified as integral to her emotional recovery, while ensuring appropriate safety guidelines were in place. Eleanor Vance's public confession had a profound impact on the community. Some residents, particularly those who had supported her initial opposition to Emily's dogs, felt a sense of betrayal, but others recognized the courage it took to admit such a monumental mistake, and praised her for her late, but honest, disclosure. The district attorney reviewed the case, but declined to press charges, citing the expiration of the statute of limitations for the lesser offense and insufficient evidence for a more serious charge. Nevertheless, Eleanor voluntarily took action, surrendering her driver's license and beginning weekly counseling for addiction at the community center. In an unexpected move, Eleanor also proposed a civil settlement with the Davis family, a trust fund to support Emily's education and future. At first, Martha and Robert hesitated, feeling it was just payment for their loss, but they eventually agreed after Eleanor insisted the trust fund would also cover the care and training of the dogs, presented as support rather than mere compensation. "We can't change the past," Martha said to Robert during one of their quiet evenings. "But we can build a better future for Emily." That's what Michael and Sarah would have wanted. One of the most remarkable outcomes was Dr. Nathan Evans's continued involvement in Emily and her dog's lives. Based on his initial observations, Dr. Evans developed an integrated program combining animal-assisted therapy with traditional healing methods. In this program, Emily played a dual role, patient and partner, as her unique bond with her dogs provided vital insights for more effective program design. Dr. Evans presented his innovative findings at a mental health and behavioral health symposium organized by the Cape Cod Hospital. "We're not just looking at a child with pets," he explained. "Emily has developed a complex communication system integrating human and animal cues. They can perform coordinated movements, but more importantly, this partnership has served as a powerful emotional anchor for Emily in the face of extreme trauma, helping to mitigate its severe impact on her development." By September, news of Emily's progress had spread beyond the local level. Researchers at the Tufts University Center for Animals and Public Policy took notice. After careful planning and ensuring Emily's welfare, Martha and Robert allowed a focused study on the impact of Emily's bond with her dogs. The findings from this research, co-authored with Dr. Evans, were published in a prominent academic journal, featuring Emily as a young co-author. Slowly, Emily emerged from her protective silence. She spoke more frequently, though often still to her family and Dr. Evans. Her extensive vocabulary, honed by early reading, often surprised the adults, delivered in the innocent, direct voice of a child. "I don't have to talk for the dogs," she told Dr. Evans during one session. "They understand me, without words. But people need words to understand how you feel." When school started again in the fall, the Davis family faced a new challenge. Emily struggled with the traditional classroom setting, still healing from trauma and more comfortable with her dog's presence than with other children. After long discussions with teachers and therapists, they developed a special schedule. Emily would attend morning classes and continue her therapy in the afternoons. The proposal to include Sarge, her service animal, at school was initially met with resistance from the administration due to potential distractions and allergies, but the community, once divided, rallied again for Emily. Parents launched a petition, the school committee held a special meeting, and eventually a compromise was reached. Sarge would be allowed to accompany Emily as she adjusted to school, with his presence gradually reduced as she became more comfortable. On her first day at Barnstable Elementary, Emily walked in, gripping Sarge's service vest and Martha's hand. Although students had been told about their new classmate, their curiosity was natural, something that might have overwhelmed Emily months ago. But now she spoke with confidence. She calmly explained to her classmates why Sarge was with her, the dog sitting quietly beside her desk. "He helps me calm down when I'm scared," she said softly, "and he makes me feel safe." By winter, Emily had adjusted to attending school full days 3 times a week. Sarge remained in the guidance counselor's office, no longer constantly by her side. Despite initial fears that her interrupted education would leave her behind, Emily excelled academically, especially in reading and natural sciences. Though her social progress was slower, by the school's holiday concert in December, she had begun to form connections with 2 classmates who shared her love for animals. Chapter 19, Winter Storm, Unexpected Shelter. Parallel to Emily's emergence, Eleanor Vance's path continued its quiet turn towards redemption. After her honest confession, she voluntarily withdrew from public life, sold her large Victorian house, and moved into a modest apartment near the community center, where she began to volunteer. Many expected her to leave Willow Creek altogether, but Eleanor chose to stay, accepting the community's watchful eyes as part of her own process of atonement. Sometimes the lights were on in her apartment late, a sign of activity, but she was rarely seen out, usually only for essential errands. Her husband mentioned to a few friends that Eleanor was in a period of personal reflection, but he didn't share much about its true nature. A significant moment in Eleanor's relationship with the Davis family arrived unexpectedly in the midst of a severe snowstorm that knocked out power across Cape Cod. As temperatures dropped and Robert's health faltered, emergency services set up warming centers for those at risk. Martha, desperate to evacuate Robert, Emily, and their 6 large dogs, struggled when their old car wouldn't start in the bitter cold. It was Eleanor who answered their call. She arrived in a rented SUV, large enough to transport the entire Davis family, dogs included, to the temporary shelter. During the 3 days they spent together at the community shelter, the first fragile steps of forgiveness were planted between Eleanor and the Davis family. It wasn't the simple forgiveness seen on greeting cards, but a deeper reconciliation, an acknowledgement of past wrongs while facing the process of healing together. Chapter 20. A Legacy of Love and Healing, by spring, Dr. Nathan Evans's program had expanded to support more children with trauma and communication difficulties. With the Davis family's permission, he launched the Pause for Communication program, held at a training center donated by a local business owner moved by Emily's story. Sarge and Emily's other dogs became the program's first models, demonstrating the communication techniques they had honed. Emily, once silent and the subject of town gossip, gradually emerged as a junior instructor. Under guidance, she now helped other children learn to connect with therapy dogs. Though her voice was sometimes still hesitant, it carried an honest, unique depth as she taught about canine communication. To a 7-year-old boy who hadn't spoken since witnessing domestic violence, Emily said, "The dogs feel what's in your heart. They don't need perfect words. They just need you to be real." In that way, she reached the child in a way that conventional therapy had failed. Slowly, the boy extended his hand towards a German shepherd named Poppy, carefully introduced by Emily, and moments later, his first smile appeared, the first in nearly a year. On the anniversary of the court decision that had nearly separated Emily and her dogs, Mayor Williams proclaimed Canine Companionship Day in Willow Creek. A celebration was held in the very garden where Sarge had once saved Emily from drowning. At the event, a small bronze plaque was dedicated to commemorate the incident and acknowledge the program that had grown from it. Surrounded by her 6 German shepherds, her grandparents, Dr. Evans, and to the surprise of many, even Eleanor Vance, Emily accepted a certificate of recognition from Mayor Williams, thanking her for her contribution to the community. When Emily was invited to speak before the crowd, she walked to the microphone, Sarge faithfully at her side, quiet but alert. "My parents always said," Emily stated clearly and confidently, "that dogs and people were made to support each other. I think they would be very happy to see how many people are being helped now." She looked down at her dogs with affection, her serious expression softening into the bright smile of a happy 7-year-old. "The dogs always knew that," she added. "Sometimes, they just need to remind us." As the crowd applauded, Martha Davis hugged her granddaughter, tears in her eyes. "Your parents would be so proud," she whispered softly. Emily nodded, stroking Sarge's head with the confidence of a little girl who had weathered a storm and was now facing the future with the help of 6 loyal dogs and a community that in the end had come together to fight for them. Chapter 21. Reflection. As we journey through the later stages of life, we often reflect on what truly matters. Emily's journey reminds us that healing can come in unexpected forms, and that it is never too late for forgiveness or a new beginning. Like Eleanor, many of us carry the weight of regret, mistakes we believed would define us forever. But in confronting the truth, we learn vital lessons. Acknowledging our vulnerability is the first step towards true healing and making amends. The bond between Emily and her dogs illustrates the profound connection possible with creatures who offer unconditional support. They remind us that family is not just about blood, but about those who quietly walk with us through our darkest moments without judgment. As we face the challenges of aging, let us remember that wisdom comes not from avoiding hardship, but from the ability to live through it and triumph, accompanied by silent friends who understand our souls without needing words. We hope Emily's story touched your hearts today. Don't forget to subscribe to the K9 Code Red channel for more stories that explore the power of the human-animal bond. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Join us next time.